Thank you, Jan, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. In Austria, it's a little bit after 8 in the morning, and welcome to my session about the Power BI data flows. My name is Wolfgang Strasser. I come from Austria. I'm a business intelligence consultant. I'm doing data warehousing, reporting, BI projects on premises, in the cloud, and wherever the data lies. And I'm working for a company called Cubido, and I'm really happy today that I'm allowed to present for the virtual Power BI days. And in that place, I would like to thank Jan for doing this amazing stuff of conference series, organizing the conference in Belgium, and today the virtual day. It's really great, and thank you. Before I would like to dive deeper into the area of the Power BI data flows. The question is, why do we need another data integration thing? Why is there the need for another data flow engine? And I think everyone, I hope so, has already seen that kind of wave, those 3 waves of business intelligence, which started many years ago with the first wave, the technical BI, which is the first one. And in that wave, it was that kind of BI projects that were mainly driven by the IT department. So there were some requirements coming from the departments itself, but the IT department was the department that was driving the business intelligence. And the IT department was doing the project planning, the project management, and also the delivery. And at that time, BI projects were somehow, yeah, here's your report, use it. The second wave, which moved more into the self-service business intelligence, and that was the step to give more power to the analysts, not to the end users itself. It got more to the key users. Everybody should use the data, but it was also more driven or more controlled, let's call it in that way. The idea behind it was everybody should analyze the data, but it was coming more from the analyst to the end user. And the third wave, which we are in now, it's called the end user BI, where everyone should be able to work with the data he or she needs. And that is a thing which is, when I'm doing my consultancy projects, I see it's not the easiest way of doing projects, because there are many sources of data out there. And it's not really easy to really fetch them, put them into a meaningful integration, and then work with that data. And what business intelligence really needs is data. And how to get to that data, there is some preparation needed. Also in the field of self-service BI, data preparation is needed. And if you look at the normal classical legacy data warehousing projects, data preparation takes time. And there are some studies which say between 60 and 80% of a BI project needs to be filled, or data preparation takes about that time. And in some projects, it's even more. So there's 90% of data preparation and only 10% of doing the real interesting stuff like reporting, building data models, and everything like that. For the self-service side, it's the self-service BI. It really needs, or what it wants is to give more power to the key users, to the business analysts, to move the steering of the reporting projects from the centralized departments to the analysts, to the key users, that they are able to access data sources faster, because that is now a requirement we see in many of our projects. We need that data. And the best would be we need it today or yesterday. So it's really much more needed to get faster access to data sources. And with that, you have some sort of things you have to solve, like the integration of those data sources, because those data sources, those newer data sources, are not those classical data sources as we used to know, like the SQL server, which stores the data, or an Oracle, SAP, whatever. Those are more those kind of new kind of sources, like social media, like Google Analytics, like OData, like web APIs, whatever. So there are more things that have to be considered for the self-service BI approach. And what self-service BI really, really needs to work, what we've seen is we need some data models. And data models can be built from different people. And I would like to show you the thing where we are currently in the self-service world and where those Power BI data flows step in. So when we look at the current state of self-service BI, in the BI area itself, like doing the reporting, doing these interactive integration analytics, it's, I think, for the Microsoft side, it's well solved. Let's have a look at Power BI. It's a great tool. You can integrate data sources, you can work with it, you can analyze it, you can publish it, you can collaborate. But for the ETL, especially in the collaboration thing, it's for me, it's a little bit of mixed feeling, because we have some sorts of approaches like a Power Query approach where you use Power Query and the M language to build your data set within Power BI. But when you have a look at the self-service BI in a corporate environment, like in a corporate environment, you want to do the collaboration based on those self-service data models. And that is some side where it really needs some more polishing and some more things. And when we have a look at a screenshot I've taken from one of the Ignite sessions about the data flows, it's on the left side, we have our source systems. And then we have an ETL process, which pushes the data into a data warehouse, a data lake, a data store, let's call it that way. And then we have the self-service BI box, which is really for the end users, for the users to build up their reports and dashboards. And the yellow box itself, it's that green mark over there. The BI approach is very well suitable for self-service BI. But for the box, the non-existing box here, for the ETL approach, we do not really have a centralized approach. And that is the part where the Power BI data flows will step in. And why is this thing missing? Because when you say, hey, we have Power Query and we can publish our data sets in Power BI to the Power BI service, we have some sort of collaboration. But let's imagine we have a data set which pulls data out of your data sources, and that data set uses the Power Query and the M language to build up that data set. And that data set is bound to a Power BI report. So there's a direct connection between one data set and the Power BI report. What you can do is you can reuse that data set and build another report. But here you have the report or the report pages. But think of it, you build a second report which has a different data set as data source, and we build another report which has another data set as the sources of the reports. And now we've got the thing in data warehousing. When you're doing data warehousing, centralized data storage, you are doing the integration and you are doing that kind of concept of reusing logic. And imagine we have one table in that data set that is one central label we want to use in all the other data sets. What is the approach with Power BI? Well, it's the copy and paste duplication approach, I would call it, because currently it's not possible to take that one entity, that table from the data set one, and somehow link it, publish whatever it to another data set. So we have to fetch that M code over there and pull it into the other data set. So that's somehow reusability, but not that kind of reusability we really want to do in the year 2019. And now, back last year, the Power BI team introduced a new concept. They called it, after some renamings, Power BI Dataflows. And one of the main sources, if you're interested in the topic, and I hope you are because you are watching that webinar today, is the Power BI Dataflows white paper from Amir Netz. And within that white paper, Amir describes all the information around the data flows. And there's one thing the Power BI team inserted there, which really describes the position where the data flows are inserted, because we start at the bottom. We have the raw data, we have our data sources. And in the older view of Power BI data modeling, we had the raw sources, and then we had our data sets. And data sets were the source for interactive reports and dashboards. And now they are inserting data flows. So data flows can be seen as the data source for data sets. And data flows, like maybe you know integration services, data flows are the parts of the data integration that really fetches data from sources and pushes data into some targets. And now we have some sort of data integration engine in the cloud that fills, I won't call it a data warehouse, that fills entities, tables in a data lake, in a data store in the cloud. And those tables can be used as sources for data sets. And that is the major thing we have here. Those tables can be reused. So we can build a centralized data integration. For example, that one dimension I had in my previous slide, that orange one, and that information, how to build the table, is done once, stored once, but used in multiple data sets. Some things you should know before we start into the deeper thing is Power BI data flows only work in app workspaces. They are not available in my workspace, so they are only available in app workspaces because they are there for collaboration. They are there for centralized data preparation. And my workspace is just for me, so no collaboration in that area. When I talk about entities in the concept of data flows, you can compare them to tables. So a data flow has results, and results are entities, and you can compare it directly to a table. So what we are doing, we fetch data out of the data source and write them into a table, and that is the source for a data set in Power BI. A data flow, a Power BI data flow, that's the data preparation pipeline. So you can a little bit compare it to integration services, the data flow task there. We have a source, we have some transformations, and then we have the target. And the transformations in the Power BI data flows is done using the Power Query. It's a Power Query online. It's using the M language, and it's getting more and more data sources. There, in the beginning, I think there were about 20 different data sources. With the January update, we have 40-something data sources. And there are some hidden treasures. If there are some data sources that are not supported in the user interface, some of them are already supported. You can paste the M code from your Power BI desktop into the web user interface, and you can connect directly, for example, to an SAP system. What you can also do, we have an app workspace, and within that app workspace, we can create multiple data flows. So we can create a data flow fetching data from an Excel file lying in SharePoint Online. We can fetch data coming from CRM Online. We can fetch data coming from our on-premises SQL Server database, and we can fetch data coming from our data warehouse, which lies in the cloud. And the data itself is read using transaction consistency. So if there's an error during the read from the data source, either everything or nothing is written to the target. Sorry. And data flows, they are really there for reusable data integration. As I've shown you in the picture with Power BI, reusability is more than copy and paste it. It's more like centralize your logic and do the data integration on one place, and especially bring that knowledge to the end user, to the key user, to the business analyst. The major problem with the centralized data models for self-service BI is it's too slow. People from the departments, financial departments, controlling, whatever, they want access to the data immediately. And with the Power BI data flows, they are able to do it themselves. So they are not limited to the IT department. And what is really, really important to mention here, the Power BI data sets, Power BI data flows are really based on proven technologies. They are using Power Query to do the transformation. They store the data in Azure Data Storage, Data Lake Storage Generation 2. And for the data model, in the ideal world, you don't have to think about creating your own data model because you can use the common data model. And the last two ones are really hidden from the end user. Power Query is there. You have the graphical editor, and you see that there is some transformation ongoing there. But for the storage and also for the data model, where the data is stored, it's somehow hidden from the user. Some short words about the common data model. Maybe you've heard about it, maybe you've not. The common data model is a standardized schema coming from Microsoft. They have seen that during business applications development, in every project, they had to reinvent the wheel considering the data model. And then they thought, okay, an account is an account is an account. So we can somehow standardize the definition of an account entity, and they've done it. So they provided a data schema that is modular and really focusing on business applications. As you can see here, we have currency entities, we have email entities, we have contact entities, we have appointment entities, and that data model is standardized and open sourced from Microsoft. You can download the definition, and there are some systems that implement and reuse the common data model. So there is, for example, the common data service for applications. That is the foundation for Dynamics 365 applications, and Power Apps can also use the common data service for apps. And there's another approach. It's also a common data service because the common data model is the model itself. We need an application that really implements and really stores the data. So it's, in most of the cases, it's called a common data service. And in the Power BI field, those are the data flows. Power BI data flows, they are really using the common data model and providing a data model to store results from data integration. As you can see in the bottom, we have many different systems that can source our data integration. And that data integration can have the common data model entity as a target. As I said, can have. It's not a must. You can use the account, you can use the order entity from the common data model, but you don't really have to. And it's one way for the transactional on the left side, common data service for application. And for the analytics side, we have the Power BI data lake common data model thing. But enough words, I would say, let's see how a Power BI data flow really works. What you can see now is I've created a new app workspace, and there are some things you have to consider. I've created a new workspace because that one is a better foundation when doing Power BI data flow work. Power BI data flows also work in the older approach of Power BI workspaces, but with the newer approach, it's easier and you get some more features there. How to create a new data flow? Well, I've got no reports in there, no data sets in there, and I've already created some data flows. But how can you create it? We have the create and we have the data flow option here, and that is the starting point. Let's start it here. And now we have 3 options. We can start with defining new entities. And that is the thing I would like to do because that is the thing we need to initially do. And that is, let's start the data integration pipeline. The other 2, I will come back later. So let's add new entities. And what is coming up now is the list of supported data sources. As you can see, we have file data sources, we have database data sources, we have Azure data sources like SQL database, SQL data warehouse, blob storage, and all those things. We have online services that can be used as sources, and also the other section like OData, SharePoint lists, and the blank query, which I will come back later. For the start, I want to connect to SQL Server in the cloud. And let's connect to that. And as you can see in that database, I have some tables in there, and I would like to fetch the sales table. And it looks somehow familiar with the Power BI desktop environment. When you're doing Power Query get data, I select I want to have the sales data, and you get a preview of your table. And when I click next, we get into the Power Query. It's here, the Power Query online thing. And what we can do now is we can remove, for example, the salesperson column. Like you can see it here, we have the Power Query functionality limited Power Query functionality compared to the Power BI desktop, what is possible there, but you can do it, and the feeling it's the same. Like we do, no, sorry, not remove errors. And you also can remove the steps here. I want to remove that column. So also those applied steps, you have them here, like in the normal editor. You also have those kind of transform table options, reduce rows, add columns, whatever thing. And there's one thing we have to do here now is we are doing data integration. We are not fetching data and pulling it into a data model. We are doing data integration. So we have a source on the left side here. And now we need to put it somewhere. And there are 2 choices. The first choice is to map it to a common data model object entity, or to write it to a custom entity. And in my case, I would like to fetch that one and write it to a common data model entity. And I change it from custom to map it to standard. And now I have to look for an object in the common data model that can hold the information. And as you can see here, we have activity, we have article, we have blog entities. And I think there should be somewhere an order product. And that one is the thing I would like to use here, because I've got some mapping to do now. We have the source column and we have the order product fields. And what we have somewhere over there, OP, where the quantity, it's mapped already. And now we have to do the product name, which is stored in the article. And then we have the We take the ship to contact, it's the customer name, and the sales. Too many fields to map. Let's see. We take the created on as the sales data field, and that's it. So now we have data source coming from a SQL server or a SQL database table, doing some transformation in there with Power Query, and then map it to a common data model entity. And that's it. And now we are done. So we can do the done button. And now we have our first data flow, which is unsaved at the moment, but we have a data flow with one entity in there. And you can see here, it's from the entity type order product. And if you want to have a look at the field list, you can just open it and have a look here. I will save that one. It's the session data flow. And I put the sales in there and I just save it. And what we can do now is we can do a refresh of the data now or set a schedule for that one. For the demo itself, I just go here. We have the session over there, and I do the refresh now. There's one thing I wanted to point out here. You can use the data sources that are listed in the user interface over there, but we can also create a data flow which uses M code, and I've borrowed some code from Matt Ellington to create a common date table. And that common date table is using Power Query. It's using M code. And what you can do now is you just open a blank query, put that M code in there. We are done here. We get a list of date entries, a date dimension, and the entity type, I don't want to map it to a common data model entity. I want to map it to an entity which is called dim date, and I'm done with it. I want to save it, and that data flow I call session data flow dim date. Save it, and I do a refresh now to get some data into my data flow. So when it's done, we have two new data flows here, and let's have a look if the first one worked well. Refresh history, yeah, it completed, no error here, and the dimension date is pulling the data from the M code into the source, or not in the source, into the target. So that was the first step. We created, or we connected to raw data, and then we created a data flow that populates entities in our data source. And the next thing is we need to consume the data flow entities. So they are now used as a source for a data set. And what I need to do now is, I haven't done it before, I need to start my Power BI desktop. And is it coming? Yeah, it's starting up. And what we need to do now is we need to connect to the data flow entities with the use of, when the get data is here, we have Power BI, and we have a new type of connector. It's the Power BI data flows connector. And that one is quite convenient. It's a preview connector, okay, that's okay for me. And what it does now, we need to connect to our Power BI environment. So I need to enter my credentials here, connect. And what I get here is the list of data flows that are available for my user. And as you can see, I have got two workspaces with data flows in there. And that one is the one I created here. So I've got my Dataflow sales here, and I've got my dimension date here. What we can do now is we can do the load, or we can do an edit. So you can use that kind of data source and you can transform it before putting it into your data set. And what maybe I've not done in the ideal way is I've only put one entity into it, but you can also put multiple entities in a data flow. And what you can do is you can use entities from different data flows that are maybe also lying in different workspaces. So you can do some data integration from multiple sources, but I just load it into my model. And what you can do in the next step is you can define somehow the relationship, because you want to build a data model based on the data in the data flow entities. It takes some time because it reads the structure, and then we have the information in there. We have our sales and we have our date, and we have the created on, and I just put it in relation, and I'm looking for my quantity, and I want to have it per year now, and we see, okay, financial year was maybe not the thing. Now it looks better. Yeah, we have the month like in the year of the year 2018 and the different month where we have the sales. So here you have the usage of your data flow entities within a data model. And you can add some calculations, you can add some measures, and you can even do the edit query thing where you do the transformation based on your centralized stored entities. So there are two steps. The first one is you have to create your data flow. And the second one is you have to create a data set based on that data flow entities. And the thing you have to separate here is data preparation, because that is done centralized, and that one can be reused compared to the approach with the data preparation in Power BI. Before data flows, it was based on a data set that it was bound to the reporting barriers. And now the question is, who can use Power BI data flows? Because in the last time, many of those really cool and fancy features were only released for, or are only available in Power BI Premium. But the good thing is everyone, it doesn't matter if it is a pro user or a premium user, can use Power BI data flows in the foundation thing. There are some features that are only available for Power BI Premium, but when we have a look at the feature comparison, we can see that Power BI Pro and Premium, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars or columns that are not filled, but everybody in a pro user can do a scattered refresh. Yeah, that's good. But everybody has some sort of storage assigned to a user. And that is the thing where the Azure Data Lake storage comes into it. Every pro user has 10 gigabytes of assigned storage space. And that can be filled with data flow entities. So you have a data lake on your own. You can't really see, you can't really access it from another tool in the beginning because it is hidden behind the Power BI user interface, but you have 10 gigabytes of of data storage. What you also have is Power Query Online. You can do the data flow management in the cloud. You have connectors, you have integration with Azure, but what you cannot do is incremental refresh. It's a thing that is also only available in the premium capacities. When you have big tables and you want to not load every or the full data set every time, you can do incremental refresh with Power BI Premium. And in the data flow environment, it's also only available in the premium thing. And also there is a concept of linked entities and computed entities. Linked entities, imagine you have defined a data flow, and that data flow, you want to reuse those entities in other data flows. And you can define a reference, a linked entity that doesn't really do the data integration process a second time. It only references the data that is produced by the first data flow. And that is a thing that is only available in Premium. But if you have Pro license, you can start with Power BI data flows today. It's in public preview, and you can use all those features I've shown you. You can connect to your data sources. You can Power Query online in the web browser, and you can create your data flow entities. What is actually running behind the scenes? So we have on the left, I've borrowed that picture from the documentation, which is, by the way, also a very good resource to get the information what is possible with data flows. So we have, in that case, 3 different data sources. And those data sources are connected using data flows into different app workspaces. So we have data flows in there, app workspaces in there, and parts of the yellow data source are in there, and there's a linked entity going into another data flow. And we have those purple and blue entities that are coming from the different data sources and pulled into, using a Power BI data flow, pulled into data flow entities. One thing you have to think of here is when you have a Power BI data set, you can define a scheduled refresh. And that scheduled refresh is for the whole data set. With the Power BI data flows, you can split your data integration in different parts. And for example, you have a date dimension, and that shouldn't really change. So maybe once in a month is enough to fill it with new logic. But you have sales information which you need maybe daily or maybe 8 times a day. And so you can split it into different data flows, and you can define different scheduling schedules. So refresh schedules to fill that data. And now we have that data stored in the Azure Data Lake storage, which is initially hidden by the user. You only have those entity lists in the Power BI portal, and that's it. You don't know where it lies. You don't know which structure it has. It's hidden from the user. And that is the part where we connect from Power BI Desktop to build a data set. We query data from different data flows. We query data from different entities lying in different data flows, and we build a model based on that. We can do Power Query here in addition to the Power Query, which is here. And then we build reports and dashboards, and those can be published to the Power BI service. So basically, it's data flowing from the source systems using one or multiple data flows, Power BI data flows to be exact, store them into Power BI data flow entities. Those can be reused, recomputed within the data lake itself, and then they can be used as source entities for building up Power BI data sets. And those data sets are, as we know, the main source of our Power BI reports. Another architectural overview, every Power BI data flow entity that is fetched from the source and stored into the Power BI data flows area, they are stored in so-called CDM folders. And CDM, it's the common data model. And it's somehow compared to a directory structure. We have the data itself in there, and we have a definition file, how the data is really stored. And what you can do is, you can do the bring your own storage account story, which means you are disconnecting the storage that is provided by Power BI to you, the 10 gigs for every user in a Pro license, and you can attach your own Azure Data Lake to your Power BI environment. And that brings you possibilities like we have Power BI on that side. Dataflows are filling CDM folders, but imagine you have a data warehouse in the cloud, you have a big data pipeline, you have other sources, and you are already using a data lake in your company, and you can publish and connect your storage accounts and merge it with the Power BI, and then you can use created entities, for example, with Azure Databricks, and use them in Power BI for your analysis. And so we have the two sides. We have the low-code, no-code approach, which is done by the Power Query Online thing in Power BI Dataflows. And then you have those data science, data engineering with high logic, with really hardened data preparation approaches, which can also write to a folder or a structure, let's call it that way, that is understandable by Power BI. So that is really a very good approach, that you are not limited to your Power BI environment only, but you can also use data that is already there in your company. And what you can also do is those CDM folders created by Power BI can be reused in, for example, your Azure SQL data warehouse or for some machine learning in your company. CDM folders, just a short overview. It's a structure. You can compare it to a file system. We have a CDM folder, which in that case is like named like my app workspace or my data flow, to be exact. And then we have a metadata file that defines the structure of the entities that are contained in that data flow. And last but not least, we have data files. And the metadata file, it's a JSON file. And you can write your own JSON file if you're using bring your own storage account. But what you can also do is, I just switch to my Power BI here. And when you want to see what is the definition of my sales data flow, you can do the export JSON here. And wrong application. Back. And we are taking that one. Where are we? We are here. And as you can see, we have the definition here. It's not formatted, but we have the information here. And what starts in that one, it's the queries metadata, which contains the M code in here. And then we have the definition of the columns that are defined and filled by the data flow, but it's more easier to see here. In that one, we have the query metadata, and then we have the entities. And then we have the attributes of those entities and how they are filled and mapped from the query source into the entities. So it's a standardized schema that you can use with your own data preparation. So it's really, really easy. Data flow administration, I'm almost out of time, but I added those things into my slides and I won't change it to a demo now. I have it here. What is really, really needed here is you have to enable your data flows. It's a tenant setting in the administration portal, and you can define who or is your application allowed to create data flows, yes or no. So if it's disabled, you won't see that data flows entry in your overview of your workspace. And for the bring your own storage accounts, you can define it also in the admin portal. You have those data flow settings here. There are some things to consider. The documentation is very good here. You have to prepare your own data lake storage account. It's a tenant setting, so it's not based on the workspace, but you can define on a workspace setting if you're using the company's data lake or you're using the Power BI data lake. And here, if you are doing the mapping, you have to do some security things and all that, but it's a step-by-step documentation over there. In the data flow list, you have some options. I've already shown you the export JSON file. You can have a look at the refresh history. You can edit the data flow, and you can also start, like you see here, a refresh of the data. What you can also do is you can schedule a refresh. For pro users, you have 8 times a day. For premium users, you can do it 48 times a day. And that one is based on the workflow, not on the entity itself. It's based on the workflow. But if you separate the workflows in different kinds of data actuality requirements, we can do the calendar workflow maybe once a month, and the sales every 3 hours for Pro, for example. And for the premium thing, it's a little bit different. When you are doing the premium or using premium capacity, you have to enable the premium or the data flow workload itself. It's not enabled by default. So if you're creating a premium workspace, workflows are not there by default. You have to enable them, and you have to assign a maximum memory, because data preparation and data integration takes some of the resources, and you can limit the amount of memory in there. With that, I'm at the end of my session. I've put a list of resources in there. I already mentioned the Dataflows white paper of Amir, and the documentation is very good, and there are some blog posts out there from Matthew, from Adam, Reza, and I've also already done and written some blog posts. And there are also some videos out there if you want to have a deeper look about the data flow integration, the new thing that is already here. And with that, I want to thank you for joining that early on a Sunday. I hope it was interesting for you. Are there any questions, Jan?
Hi. So, nope, there are no questions.
No.
People were sipping their coffee. It was pretty clear, by the way. It's a good introduction to the entire concept of data flows. We did have Ben Watt saying, good morning, guys.
Okay, good morning, Ben.
Some people are reacting now. Murali is saying, excellent session. Obviously.
Thank you.
Can we get the presentation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have an upload thing on the website, or I can put it on my blog? So
I do have an upload thing. Feel free to put it on your blog as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Depending on you saying yes, please, I will put the recording online on our YouTube channel, recordings.powerbidays.com, and I'll share the slides there as well. So yeah.
We will do that. You get the slides.
Cool. People are waking up now, by the way. So more people are saying good morning. It was very helpful. We have some USA guys reacting. Thanks, Wolfgang. It's 1 a.m. in the morning in Phoenix, Arizona. George says, great introduction. Many thanks. Raleigh says, thanks again for the presentation. Ted says, can you upload from on-premise Excel files? That's an actual question.
Yes. The Power BI gateways are used there. And I already had a demo prepared, but not enough time. You can use on-premises Excel files, and you use it like it's like you specify the path where the Excel file lies, and you define the gateway that is used, and that's it. And then you have access to your local Excel file. Sorry. So it's really, really easy.
Okay. So that with you having the demo ready, we need to talk about getting another session going for you. So Martin is asking, sharing app workspaces. That's why all team members can access it. I have no idea what that is about.
I think it's based with the collaboration. data flows are only available in app workspaces because they are built up with the mind of reusing them. And in my workspace, it's just me. I can reuse it, but it's not that kind of collaboration idea that is behind there, I think.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it answers it, but if it's unclear, just send me an email or ping me wherever, and I will try to follow up with that.
Okay, cool. Sergey is asking if Dataflows has any advantages comparing to Data Factory v2 as an ETL tool.
They both have pros and cons, and I think it's a little bit too early to really say which one will be the tool for filling Power BI data sources. It's Data Factory is more like a big brother. Maybe it's too much, but it's capable of doing more things. You have more connectors, you have more options doing with your data. And the Power BI data flows currently are really focusing on filling those data flow entities. So it's really one purpose to do. And the data factory approach, it's a more general one. But I think it still takes some time for the teams maybe to work together, maybe to get a common roadmap or whatever. So it's really every of those tools has at the moment a little bit of different angle to work.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting thanks from Greece as well. So in Athens, people are tuning in there as well. And with that, I suppose that's it. I thank you very much, Wolfgang, for doing this early for everybody.
Thank you, Jan, for putting that together. So it was a pleasure for me.